Today, this video is going to cover a different topic. It's still within the strength realm. It's still within the powerlifting universe, but this isn't going to be a video about Daniel Zamani or Julius Maddox. I know it seems like my last almost 10 videos have been about either Daniel Zamani or Julius Maddox or the both of them. But today we're going to do something a little bit different. Recently, as some of you may have heard, the IPF has suspended the USAPL. Now, if you don't know who or what the IPF is, they are the International Powerlifting Federation, and a lot of the top elite powerlifters compete or have competed in the USAPL, which is under the IPF. And some of these athletes, these elite powerlifters, include John Hack, Taylor Atwood, Russell Orhii, Amanda Lawrence. The list is pretty long. Now, they had suspended the USAPL, which of course affects the powerlifters who compete in the USAPL, especially the elite powerlifters. And it affects them because a lot of them have this goal of competing at the world or global level in order to compete against, the best powerlifters from other countries. And now they can't do that because one of the consequences of this suspension is that USAPL athletes cannot compete at an IPF event. Now, I know this has to hurt someone like Russell Orhii, who has been able to dominate at the national level, but hasn't really had the opportunity or gotten the chance to dominate at the world or global level. And it's not because he isn't good, because honestly, Russell Orhii is probably the best power lifter within his weight class in the world. But the reason he hasn't been able to dominate at the world level is because, number one, last year's IPF Worlds event didn't happen, and I think it didn't happen due to COVID. And this year, he can't compete at IPF Worlds because he's a USAPL athlete. And this suspension could take away Orhii's chance and opportunity to not only become a multiple-time world champion, but to become a multiple-time world champion consecutively. So why did the USAPL get suspended in the first place? Well, they had gotten suspended because the IPF had imposed a mandate where for the USAPL to be part of the IPF, they would have to become WADA compliant. WADA stands for World Anti-Doping Agency, and the USAPL refusing to become WADA compliant and refusing to adopt this mandate. As I mentioned earlier, it really just limits the amount of events that USAPL athletes are able to go to. Right now, I think they're only really able to attend local and national USAPL events. What I thought of when I first heard about this situation and what I kind of compared it to, it's almost like when the NCAA suspends a basketball, football, whatever sports team, they suspend them from being able to participate in bowl games or postseason games. They can still play during the regular season, but these games aren't really going to count toward anything if they can't get beyond the regular season. The reason, though, that the USAPL did not agree to become WADA compliant, it's not because they didn't want to test their athletes, but according to the USAPL, it mostly had to do with the cost of adopting this new mandate. The mandate, according to the USAPL, would increase their test costs 20-fold, and the cost of the new test would take up about half of their cash reserve. If I was the USAPL and, adopting this mandate is going to take up half of my savings, I probably wouldn't adopt this mandate either. And as far as I understand too, the mandate would also decrease the amount of tests administered to these athletes. And I believe it's because the cost per test is way more expensive. And of course, the higher the cost per test, the less tests the USAPL would be able to give. And the USAPL estimated themselves that there would be an 87% drop in administered tests across the over 400 meets that they hold a year, which is a fair point, which is a fair reason to not want to adopt this mandate, because athletes within the USAPL already probably find ways to bypass the test now. And it's not most of the athletes, but it's definitely some of them that are able to bypass this test. So could you imagine if athletes know that they have a very low chance of being tested and getting tested? The amount of athletes who would start to use PEDs, steroids, anything that would enhance their performance that number of athletes that would engage in that type of activity, that number would start to rise, which, may be obvious to us. We may know when somebody is on steroids or an athlete is using some type of performance enhancing drug. If we see their, especially if we see their performance on a certain lift drastically improve, we would know that they're on something. But there would be no proof to show this due to the lack of tests because of the high cost of the test, which obviously would be counterproductive to the mandate imposed by the IPF. Some people do think, though, of course, that the IPF should adopt the mandate because it creates a consistent process of testing of athletes for all the organizations under the IPF, which does make sense, especially at the world stage. You don't want two athletes competing against each other who have been tested two different ways. You want them tested the same so they have as equal of a chance as possible when competing against each other. Now, is getting tested differently going to give one athlete a drastic advantage over another athlete? Probably not, unless one athlete didn't get tested at all, because then you wouldn't know if he's taking something or not. But it does make sure that things are more fair and more consistent when these athletes are competing against each other. The good news, though, is that the USAPL is using the money that was previously allotted and allocated to the IPF. They're going to use that money as a payout to athletes who compete under the USAPL, which is incredible because these men and women who compete in powerlifting, they work extremely hard. And in my opinion, honestly, they should be paid for it. But guys, that's the end of the video. You guys let me know what you think about the USAPL being suspended. Do you think it's a bad thing? Do you think it's a good thing? Or what are your general thoughts on the whole situation? As always, thank you for watching. Make sure that you do like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys later.